Good evening. Top mainland lawmakers discussing political reform in Hong Kong are said to be making progress. Local representatives at the National People's Congress Standing Committee meeting say the general consensus is that the electoral method for the 2017 Chief Executive poll should be amended. Emily C. reports.
12 Hong Kong delegates to the National People's Congress arrived at the Great Hall of the People in Beijing this morning to meet Standing Committee members. The top group is expected to give the green light for Hong Kong's political reform and lay down the framework at the end of a week-long session on Sunday. After attending one of 6 group gatherings this morning, Basic Law Committee member Maria Tam said everyone supported the 2 electoral reform reports submitted by the SCR government. Chief Executive Leung Ching-ying proposed making no changes in the 2016 LegCo election, but pointed out the need to amend the electoral method for the city's top job in 2017. The DAB's Ip Kwok Tim said a draft resolution on whether Hong Kong can go forward with constitutional reform and how it should be done will be released tomorrow. The Standing Committee will discuss the draft on Thursday. According to Ip, the mainland's top lawmakers will deliberate whether there should be a high nomination threshold that requires chief executive candidates to secure the support of at least half of the nominating committee. But the final vote to set everything in stone won't happen until Sunday. Ma Fung Kwok, who represents the sports and cultural sector in LegCo, urged the body to set a clear and concrete framework in order to prevent a prolonged debate on the controversial issue. The Standing Committee's recommendations will be explained at a briefing given in Hong Kong on Monday by the mainland's top basic law expert Li Fei. Occupy Central leader Benny Tai has been invited to attend, but he says he has to teach a class. Tai said his co-conveners in the civil disobedience group may show up at the forum at Asia World at Chek Lap Kok, depending on Beijing's announcement on Sunday. The Labour Party's Lee Cheuk-in said he's most likely to skip the session, which he labelled as meaningless because of limited opportunities to exchange views with mainland officials. 14 of Hong Kong's 27 pan-democratic legislators met Lee in Shenzhen last Thursday. They described the talks as a good start for further dialogue, but said it did not help narrow the massive gap between Beijing and the opposition camp on constitutional development.
Chief Executive Leung Ching-ying has accused Occupy Central leader Benny Tai of making the situation worse for Hong Kong's political reform.
A day after political veteran Rita Fan warned that Beijing won't be swayed by Occupy Central's tactics to gain genuine democracy, Chief Executive Leung Ching-ying added his views. Speaking before his weekly cabinet meeting, Leung took aim at Occupy's threat to paralyze Central if political reforms do not meet international standard. The chief executive pointed out that nowhere in the basic law is international standard used to refer to the electoral system. He highlighted the city's uniqueness, including the right of foreigners who are permanent residents to vote, although this doesn't fall under international standards. Leung criticized Occupy leader Benny Tai's bid to mobilize 10,000 people for a long-term civil disobedience campaign and paralyze the city's business heart. He said the plan, as well as Occupy's recent activities, including an unofficial referendum, have not helped the progress towards universal suffrage for the 2017 Chief Executive poll. Tai and his fellow Occupy organizers' actions actually make the situation worse, Leung claimed. In response, Tai accused Leung of putting the cart before the horse. The Occupy leader said people would only want to block the business hub because they see a governance crisis ahead if there is no genuine universal suffrage. Tai compared the city's current political situation to a blaze and likened his movement to a fire alarm to warn people. Even if no one sounds the alarm, Tai said, the fire is still there. Occupy co-convener Chan Kim-en accused the government of resorting to fear-mongering to blunt demands for real democracy.
I guess the authorities have been stepping up the attack towards our movement in order to scare away our supporters.
Yesterday, Hong Kong's only representative in the National People's Congress Standing Committee, Rita Fan, warned Tai that the more he protests, the less Beijing will listen to him. NPC delegate Maria Tam today added her voice to the anti-Tai chorus and accused the law professor of constantly changing his tune. She said the street blockade and other non-cooperative acts, such as strikes, planned by pro-democracy advocates, will have no impact on the NPC Standing Committee's decision on the framework for Hong Kong's political reform.
Swimmers at beaches in Tuen Mun and Tsuen Wan have defied warnings to stay out of the water after sewage flowed into the sea from a malfunctioning treatment plant nearby. The facility has been repaired, but officials say the beaches will remain closed until the water quality returns to an acceptable level. Alison Chan reports.
The conditions were perfect for a day by the sea, but lifeguards at 14 popular beaches, including Butterfly Beach, raised the red flag. Swimmers were warned not to enter the water in Tuen Mun and Tsuen Wan. The beaches were forced to close today after a sewage pollution scare. This followed an emergency sewage discharge because of a malfunction at the Pillar Point sewage treatment works. Swimmers at beaches near the plant were advised not to venture into the sea today, and notices warned them that they faced prosecution if they entered the water. But at Butterfly Beach, the closest to the Pillar Point facility, swimmers ignored the warning. I think it isn't a big problem because the water quality isn't different as before, said this man. It's like a normal swimming day. But others disagreed. This girl was convinced that the beach was polluted after seeing lots of rubbish floating around. This man noted that the water had turned black and he didn't dare swim for too long. Although government workers repaired the mechanical fault at the treatment plant overnight, the Leisure and Cultural Services Department said the beaches won't reopen until the water quality returns to acceptable levels. Environmental Protection Department staff collected seawater samples for tests this afternoon, and preliminary results are expected tomorrow. Meanwhile, the Green Group WWF is worried that the sewage discharge may have an adverse impact on Chinese white dolphins that live nearby. The organization urged the government to conduct a thorough review on the incident to avoid a repeat. Alison Chan, ATV News.
A Second World War bomb has been discovered at a construction site in North Point. It took 2 rounds of controlled explosions to make the device harmless. Joyce Wu reports.
Police were called to a construction site next to the North Point Ferry Pier on Harbour Parade at around 1 p.m. after a bomb was found. After evacuating the area, the bomb squad conducted a controlled explosion. The first attempt failed, so a second try was made at around 6 p.m. The half-a-meter-long bomb is believed to have been dropped during the Second World War. While the explosive was being made harmless, the police ordered people in nearby homes and offices to evacuate. Roads near the area were closed during the operation. In February, a bomb dropped by the US during the Second World War was unearthed at a construction site in Happy Valley, forcing the evacuation of more than 2,000 people from hotels, offices and flats in the area. It took the police bomb disposal team 9 hours to dismantle the 450-kilo device. Joyce Wu, ATV News.
The number of new HIV cases so far this year has climbed to more than 300, following 150 infections between April and June. Health experts warn that if the trend continues, the city could have a record number of HIV cases this year. Arthur Okiola reports.
The Center for Health Protection had some worrying news as it unveiled the city's latest HIV statistics. There were 150 new HIV cases between April and June, 124 men and 26 women. While the number was less than the 154 in the first quarter, the total for the first half of the year was 304, compared with 262 for the same period last year. Health officials are concerned that for the entire year, Hong Kong could have more than 600 cases, a record high for the 4th year running.
I would say the current HIV situation in Hong Kong is worrisome. Yeah, it is certainly cause for concern because of the keep on rising number of HIV infection, and we see that the epidemic is still on a rising trend and is not stable or is not static.
There is concern with the growing number of homosexual men contracting the virus. With the situation seen to be worsening, Wong called for more precautions to be taken.
It's not over, certainly, although nowadays we have effective treatment for the HIV infection. But this does not mean that you don't have to concern about catching the infection. You don't have to take precaution.
The number of people who have contracted HIV in Hong Kong over the past 3 decades now stands at 6,646. And there were 40 new cases of full-blown AIDS in the second quarter, double that of January to March. That took the number of AIDS cases in Hong Kong to 1,497. Arthur Urquiola, ATV News.
Overseas, Egypt is said to have brokered a ceasefire deal between Israel and Hamas after 6 weeks of heavy Israeli bombing of the Gaza Strip. Earlier, at least 9 Palestinians were killed in the latest round of Israeli attacks. Joyce Wu reports.
There has been no let-up in the Israeli offensive in the Gaza Strip. A pre-dawn attack destroyed one of the tallest buildings in Gaza City, injuring at least 20 people. Powerful explosions reduced much of the 13-story structure to rubble. The 70 families who lived in the building fled after being warned. Elsewhere in Gaza, a number of people were killed in Israeli airstrikes. In one incident, 2 women and a girl died when 4 houses were destroyed. A rocket fired from Gaza hit a house in the southern Israeli coastal town of Ashkelon, slightly injuring 4 people. Hamas, which rules Gaza, said it fired rockets at Tel Aviv. One was shot down by Israel's Iron Dome defense system, while sirens were heard near Ben Gurion International Airport. Since Israel began pounding Gaza 7 weeks ago, more than 2,100 Palestinians, most of them civilians, have been killed. About a quarter of the victims were children. 64 Israeli soldiers and 4 civilians died in the conflict. As the bloodshed continued, Egypt stepped up its push for a ceasefire that would include the reopening of Gaza's crossing points to allow aid and reconstruction material to enter the battered territory. Hamas is insisting that the economic blockade be lifted to improve conditions for the 1.8 million Palestinians crammed in the Gaza Strip. Joyce Wu, ATV News.
Ukraine says its forces captured a group of Russian paratroopers who crossed the border on a special mission, but Moscow says they had ended up there by mistake. The claims by Ukraine's military come as Russian President Vladimir Putin meets Ukrainian leader Petro Poroshenko in Belarus for talks on the crisis. Videos of the soldiers, plus more intense fighting in eastern Ukraine, will no doubt overshadow the meeting. Kiev has long claimed that Russia has been involved in the conflict, but has not had any proof. Putin argues that without Western meddling in Ukraine in the first place, the country would not be in a civil war. Theatre in Hong Kong these days is more diverse and popular than it's ever been, as both professionals and amateurs find ways to entertain audiences with more than just scripted performances. Playback theatre is one of those forms of drama that are all about improvisation and audience participation. ATV intern Vicky Wan takes a look.
Dark milk? What is that? Milk. What is it? From the lamb. I'm sorry. Oh, it's okay, it's okay, it's okay.
Have you ever wanted to relive a particular moment in your life? You can do it with playback theatre, where members of the audience are invited to tell their personal stories, which are then retold in a form of drama by actors. Living Stories is one of the acting troupes promoting playback theatre in Hong Kong. Its conductor, Ho Pak Chun, says co-creating and sharing stories in this manner helps people form bonds and enjoy performance art at the same time.
I think this kind of performance can make most of the audience feel that they are part of the performance. They can be the part of the performance. Art can be so close to them.
The 10 members of Living Stories stage monthly performances in Yeung using a combination of simple sets, music, and audience participation. In this performance, a member of the audience relieves the excitement of her cliff diving experience.
You can do it!
While they interpret and perform my stories, I feel touched, and I think they arouse my feelings inside, which I think maybe I suppressed for many years.
Although the shows are conducted in Chinese, the language barrier doesn't stop the flow of emotions.
The atmosphere was like we can feel like what they're feeling and see their like expressions and everything.
Interpreting the diverse stories among the audience can be a challenge, which is why it helps to have an open mind,
We cannot be 100% objective, but just try not to judge is okay. In fact, the actor make a lot of choices. These choices that imply something, and then the storyteller can see other thing. He can see, the actor look at my story in this way, and then this is communication.
It doesn't matter who you are when it comes to playback theatre. The concept is that everyone has a story. Just get on stage and tell it. Vicky Wan, ATV News.
Sports news. Real Madrid have kicked off their season on a winning note, while Manchester City signaled that they are in no mood to surrender their crown.